We've all entertained the fantasy at some point, what if we could live forever? No more aging, no more death, just infinite time to explore, create, love, perfect ourselves. It sounds like the ultimate gift. But what if I told you that buried inside that fantasy is a nightmare so subtle, so profound, that it could undo the very meaning of life itself? This isn't just about science fiction or hypothetical immortality tech, but this is about the deeper question: what happens when there are no limits? What happens to the human psyche when you remove the one thing that gives shape to everything else: death? Imagine waking up tomorrow and learning that you would never die. At first, you might feel euphoric. You'd travel the world, learn 20 languages, master every art. But then, slowly, something begins to shift. You notice that urgency fades. The thrill of now dissolves. Why rush to write that book? Why chase that dream? You'll have time, infinite time. But with that infinity comes the slow death of meaning. You see, we need limits not because they constrain us, but because they define us. Without them, everything stretches into a grey, formless eternity. Forever is not freedom, it's a fog. And here's where it gets darker. If you live forever, everyone you love, unless they too are immortal, will die. Over and over. You'll watch generations rise and fall, civilizations burn and rebuild. You'll hold the hands of 1,000 dying friends, bury countless lovers, outlive your own children. At some point, you'll stop forming new bonds. Why get attached if you know the ending is always the same? Immortality doesn't just rob life of urgency, it robs it of intimacy. And even if the whole world becomes immortal, we face a different horror: the freezing of evolution. With no death, there's no space for the new, and the stagnant accumulate. The wise become irrelevant, and the young become unnecessary. We stop growing not because we can't, but because we no longer need to. And just like that, humanity becomes a museum exhibit, alive but suspended, breathing but not becoming. This isn't just hypothetical. The psychologist Viktor Frankl once said, "What man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal." Strip away the struggle, and you strip away the soul.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But let's go deeper. What does immortality do to our identity? You are who you are because of memory, because of continuity. But the brain wasn't built to carry centuries of memory. Eventually, you start to forget. Not just details, but people, places, entire decades. And when you forget enough, you're no longer the same self. So even if your body endures, you does not. You become a ghost of your former selves, a collage of personalities stretched across centuries. Immortality doesn't preserve the self. It slowly erodes it. And here's the paradox: the more time you have, the less valuable each moment becomes. If you knew you had only a year to live, every sunrise would shatter you with beauty. Every conversation would matter. But if you have forever, that same sunrise is just another tick in an endless clock. You start to numb out, not because you want to, but because the psyche wasn't built for infinity. We are creatures of closure, of arcs, and of beginnings and ends. Take that away, and you're not liberated. You're lost. Ask yourself this: if you had infinite days to do everything you ever wanted, would you actually do it? Or would the very abundance of time make you postpone forever? We are wired to move because we know we don't have forever. That's why deadlines work. That's why heartbreak hurts. That's why we strive. Death is not the enemy, it's the hidden architect of urgency, passion, and depth. Without it, you don't transcend the human condition, you lose it. And there's something else, something haunting. If you could live forever, eventually you'd see everything. You'd read every book, visit every country, master every skill. And then what? What happens after 10,000 years? A million? There are no more surprises. No more firsts. No more mystery. And the irony is, that's when the real nightmare begins. Not boredom, but emptiness. A kind of cosmic exhaustion where even novelty becomes routine. Even wonder becomes predictable. And without wonder, what's left? So maybe the real question isn't how can we live forever? Maybe it's why do we need to die? What if death isn't a flaw in the design, but the very thing that makes design possible? What if it's not the end, but the frame? The border that gives shape to the art of life? What if immortality isn't a dream, but a trap? One that tempts us with freedom, but leaves us in a prison of meaninglessness. And if so, then maybe the ones who live the fullest aren't those who fight death, but those who befriend it. Who look it in the eye and say, because I will die, I will live. That's not despair. That's power. That's liberation. That's what makes every moment matter. The curse of infinite tomorrows, why urgency dies when death disappears. Let's imagine a world where death has been defeated. You wake up tomorrow and someone hands you the pill, the serum, the chip, whatever the method is, and says, you'll never die unless you choose to. At first, it feels like you've been given the master key to life itself. No more fear of aging, no more panic over the ticking clock, no more pressure to chase dreams before the window closes. But slowly, invisibly, something begins to shift inside you. Not in your body is perfect now, but in your mind, in your will. The fire that once drove you to act, to create, to love with urgency, it starts to dim. Why risk heartbreak today when you have infinite tomorrows? Why write the book now when eternity is on your side? Why forgive? Why fight? Why leap? Why live with intensity when every moment is just one in an endless supply? With death gone, the timer is off. The very thing that gave each second its weight is gone. You see, urgency isn't just a psychological trick. It's a spiritual compass. It tells you when something matters. It's what makes love feel sacred, what makes grief feel unbearable, what makes a sunset, a goodbye, a first kiss mean something. And when you remove death, you don't get peace, you get drift. You get the slow erosion of purpose, like a house left standing too long in the wind. And the worst part, you don't even notice it at first. You keep saying, tomorrow, I'll start. Next year, I'll change. Someday, I'll do what I was meant to do. But someday never comes, because why would it? You've got forever, and forever is the perfect excuse to never begin. This is the hidden curse. Immortality seduces you with the idea of endless possibility, but steals the very engine that makes possibility matter, the deadline. And here's a deeper layer. We humans are not built for infinite choice. We think we are. We crave options, freedom, open roads, but too much freedom paralyzes us. The psychologist Barry Schwartz called it the paradox of choice. When everything is possible, nothing feels necessary. When all doors are open, you never walk through any. And in an immortal life, all doors stay open forever. You can start a career, end it, start another, then another. You can fall in love 1,000 times, leave every single one, and still have time to do it all again. But eventually, every path starts to feel the same because they carry no cost. And it's cost that gives value. It's risk that gives love its depth. It's time that gives life its beauty. Without it, you're not living, you're loitering in eternity. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. If you knew with 100% certainty that you would never die, what would actually change? Would you become a better person? Or would you procrastinate your growth indefinitely? Would you finally pursue your passion, or would you binge another 1,000 shows, knowing you've got time? Would you deepen your relationships, or would you drift from one shallow encounter to the next, numbing yourself with novelty? The truth is, death gives you focus. It forces your hand. It edits the script of your life so that you must decide what matters to me. And without that editor, the story becomes bloated, aimless, even meaningless. Because if you can be anything forever, then you never have to be anyone fully. And there's another trap here, one that philosophers rarely mention. If you live forever, you start to outgrow the world. Not because the world changes too fast, but because you stop changing. You've seen this before. The immortal in fiction who becomes cold, numb, detached. Why does that happen? Because time without transformation is a coffin. If nothing forces you to evolve, to grieve, to adapt, to let go, you calcify. You stop becoming. And when becoming stops, life becomes observation, passive, hollow. You watch others live, but you no longer participate. And you begin to ask the most terrifying question of all: what is the point of me? That question is like a knife to the heart of immortality, because it reveals what we've been trying to avoid all along. That meaning isn't found in comfort or pleasure or duration. It's found in sacrifice, in choosing what to do with your limited time, in saying yes to one thing and no to 1,000 others. If you can say yes to everything forever, then nothing costs you anything. And when nothing costs you, nothing matters. So maybe, just maybe, death isn't the enemy. Maybe it's the sculptor of meaning. The force that sharpens our choices, ignites our loves, and wakes us up each morning with the quiet urgency that says, you don't have forever. So live like it matters. The immortal paralysis why infinite life would destroy the human soul. Let's be brutally honest. If we had infinite time, we wouldn't just lose urgency, we'd lose ourselves. Because the human soul, as we know it, is a product of limitation. It's shaped by loss, by effort, by the raw struggle of knowing that everything we love is temporary. Without that tension, without the friction of impermanence, the soul doesn't flourish, it atrophies. You might think, but if I lived forever, I could become so wise, so enlightened, so evolved. But wisdom isn't the result of time, it's the result of pressure, of confronting endings, of choosing what to value when you can't have everything. That's what gives the soul its gravity. But in an immortal life, there's no gravity, no weight to decisions, no finality to moments. And without those anchors, You don't ascend, you drift. And consider who you are right now. The things that shaped you most, the heartbreaks, the failures, the moments when you had to let go, those are the moments that forged your identity. Not the easy wins, not the endless days. It was difficulty, not duration, that made you who you are. And if you take that away, you don't get a higher version of yourself. You get a diluted one, a self that's never forced to change, never truly challenged. You begin to mistake comfort for growth. But comfort isn't the soil of the soul. Discomfort is. Loss is. Time is. Strip those away, and what's left is a hollow simulation of selfhood, an echo that repeats forever but never deepens. And when you realize that, when you feel the infinite stretch of days ahead of you and see that you're becoming less you with every century, that's when the real nightmare begins. Let's go deeper. Imagine living for thousands of years. At first you explore, you learn, you create. But eventually you've seen it all. You've rotated through careers, lovers, philosophies, nations. You've watched the rise and fall of cultures, the destruction of languages, the fading of traditions. And something terrifying starts to happen. You begin to forget why anything mattered. Not because you're ungrateful, but because meaning is built on transience. When everything lasts forever, nothing feels urgent, nothing feels sacred. Even joy becomes mechanical. You smile, but it doesn't reach your core. You laugh, but it echoes in a hollow chamber. You begin to feel like an observer, not a participant. You've become a ghost with a body, a witness to an endless parade of moments that no longer touch you. And the question creeps in, is this what life was meant to be? What does it mean to be fully alive? Most people think it's about maximizing pleasure, avoiding pain, stretching time as far as it can go. But real aliveness is something else. It's being present. It's the trembling vulnerability of knowing this moment will pass and never return. It's crying at a goodbye because you won't see them again. It's leaping into love, knowing it might break you. It's creating art, knowing it might be forgotten. It's taking a risk, knowing you might fail. That's what makes life vibrate. But when tomorrow is guaranteed, endlessly, risk dies. And when risk dies, so does passion. You stop caring deeply because you can't, because there's no edge to fall from, no abyss to peer into, no clock ticking in the background. And without that clock, what are we? Some say, but I would choose to die when I'm ready. And maybe you would. But by then, what will be left of you? Will you still be the same person who once feared death and loved life? Or will you be a faded version of yourself, worn down by centuries of detachment? Will you even remember who you were? Or will you be so fragmented, so scattered across time, that the choice to end it feels like closing a book you stopped reading long ago? Immortality sounds like control, but it's actually a surrender. A surrender to the erosion of meaning, to the fading of identity, to the paralysis of infinite options. And we rarely talk about this. We glorify eternal life in fiction, in science, in spirituality. We dream of escaping death, but we never ask what happens to the soul when it no longer has a reason to grow. I want you to sit with this. If you knew you could live for 1,000,000 years, what would you do with today? Would you still tell your partner you love them? Would you still call your mum? Would you still pursue that dream burning inside you? Or would you say, not now, I have time? Because if the answer is not now and it keeps being not now for the next 100 years, then immortality hasn't given you more life. It's taken life away. And time, paradoxically, is what allows us to live fully. It forces us to choose. It forces us to care. It forces us to show up. So when you take that pressure away, you don't gain freedom. You lose the very thing that makes freedom worth having. The final truth about death, why mortality is the greatest gift we've been given. Here's the truth no one wants to hear. Death is not the enemy. Death is not a glitch in the system, a flaw in the code, or a cruel punishment for being born. Death is the core feature that makes life worth living. And the more we try to escape it, to outsmart it, to stretch life beyond its natural arc, the more we risk unraveling everything that gives our existence beauty, urgency, and meaning. We've been conditioned to run from death, and to see it as failure, to view it as the ultimate loss. But what if it's the greatest gift we've ever been given? What if death is not the end of life, but the frame that allows life to have shape at all? Think about it. Every story that's ever moved you, every song that's ever made you weep, every moment that ever mattered because it ended. The sunset is beautiful because it fades. The goodbye is powerful because it's final. The kiss is unforgettable because it won't last. We don't cherish what's endless. We cherish what's fleeting. We cherish what we know we'll one day lose. And this isn't about glorifying suffering or pretending that loss doesn't hurt. It does. Death is painful, brutal, devastating. But that pain is also what opens us. It's what cracks the shell of ego and lets real love in. It's what humbles us, reminds us that we don't get to own anything, not people, not time, not even ourselves. And through that humility, we find something deeper than control. We find connection. We find awe. We find the courage to live with our whole hearts, knowing full well that none of it will last. And yet we love anyway. We show up anyway. We pour ourselves into fleeting moments, not because they're secure, but because they're real. That's life. That's the pulse of the human experience, intensity through impermanence. And when we try to remove death, we don't just remove pain, we remove that pulse. Let's bring this down to the ground. Think about your life right now. The people you love, the dreams you've dared to chase, the memories that still bring tears to your eyes. Would any of those matter if you knew you had limitless time? Would you still have fallen in love with the same urgency? Would you have taken the same risks? Would you have forgiven, or said goodbye, or stood up for what mattered if you knew there would always be another chance, another version, another tomorrow? Probably not. Because the power of those moments came from the fact that they could be the last, that you didn't know how much time you had, and so you showed up fully. That's what death does. It forces us into the now. It strips away the illusion that time is infinite and says, this is it, this moment, right here. Are you going to waste it? Or are you going to live it like it's the only one you'll ever get? And this is why death is not a failure of biology, it's a teacher of wisdom. It's the final punctuation mark that gives the sentence of your life its meaning. Take it away, And you don't get a better story, you get a sentence that never ends, that loops endlessly, senselessly, until the very words lose all meaning. This is what immortality risks. Not physical decay, but spiritual entropy. The slow, silent unraveling of purpose. And the most profound irony, the more we try to extend life indefinitely, the more we diminish its value. Because life is not about how long you live. It's about how deeply you live, how awake you are to the miracle of each breath, how bravely you love, knowing it could all disappear, how fiercely you fight for what matters, because you know you won't be here forever. So maybe the goal isn't to live forever. Maybe the goal is to live fully precisely because we won't. Maybe the greatest act of courage is not escaping death, but meeting it with open eyes and an open heart. Saying, I know you're coming. I know you'll take everything from me. And still I will love. I will dream. I will create. I will be. Not because I'm safe from you, but because I'm not. That is the essence of being human. Not immortality, but mortality met with magnitude, but mortality met with meaning. And if we can embrace that not just intellectually, but existentially, then we unlock the real secret. Not how to live forever, but how to live in such a way that if death came tomorrow, we could look it in the face and say, thank you. I didn't waste it.